Sophia Lou and welcome to my channel.
Hello guys and welcome to this week's Sketchbook Sunday. This week the topic as chosen by you guys is working with limited palettes. As always, the poll for next week's topic is going to go up here. As always, do not stress if your topic does not get chosen that you vote for. These are topics that I do want to touch on in future videos. I just tend to go off which one is the most popular out of all of them. I'm using a Tiger sketchbook from the Tiger store. I'm not 100% happy with the quality of this sketchbook, but you know, I'm persevering with it. I haven't actually done much in here, I'm afraid, because I'm in the middle of prepping for London Comic Con. I've got so much to do, so much. But as always, I've got my sketchbook, I've got my pencils, and I have a really nice cup of tea. This brand is Typhoon tea, I believe. It's really nice, really rich in flavour. But anyway, I digress. Grab your sketchbooks, grab your pencils, and let's discuss. So this topic is actually one of my fan favourites. If you are new to my channel and you're not entirely sure what I'm on about, when you're working with a limited palette, you are limiting the colours that you are working with, and this can be quite difficult and quite challenging at times. Whether you are working traditionally or digitally, there's always a challenge set up in place to say, oh, I can't use this colour because I have this colour. Limiting your palettes can help understand your use of colour and help you get to grip with what colours you prefer using. I find that as artists, we tend to lean particularly towards specific colour types, whether or not that's blue, purple and pink, or blue, green and yellow. There's specific colour types that people tend to lean to and tend to keep on reusing again and again as assets in their drawing. So by limiting your palette, sometimes you are actually gaining a better control of colour. And working with limited palettes is so much fun. It is one of my all-time favourite things to do, simply because it can be difficult. I've done it a few times. I've done it for my Halloween, I've done the colour challenges in the past, and if you've not seen those videos, I do recommend checking those out because you'll get a more in-depth look of how I work with the limited palette. I've done a cool palette challenge, I've done a warm palette challenge. I like my palette challenges because sometimes I find that I'm forcing myself to use colours that I would not normally work with. For example, I used to hate working with the colour green, and now it's one of the colours that I exclusively work in today. And I find it an awful lot of fun to push myself out of my boundaries and try some colours that I wouldn't normally use. I find that colours I tend not to use very often are yellow, red and orange, which are quite warm tones, and I'm trying to fix that and make myself a little bit more comfortable with a palette that I'm not used to using. So you're going to say, okay, so I want to work with a limited colour palette. So how can I work with a limited colour palette and make it work for my work? Well, I'm just going to very quickly finish this sketch. It's nothing fantastic. It's just going to be a very quick doodle. But when I'm working with a limited palette, I'm essentially going to choose, let's say we'll choose 3 colours. It's not a free marker challenge, but let's just say we're limiting ourselves to 3 colours only. We're gonna go for I'm gonna go for a green because I fancy going for a green today, and this one is, irony, the colour green. I'm just gonna swatch it here just to show you. That's what the colour looks like on this paper. And then I'm gonna go for, let's go for a pink tone. So let's say, oh, let's get a better colour than that one. We'll go with this one, which is salmon pink. And then I'm going to want a colour that ties the two between them because they're quite opposite ends of the spectrum. You can limit your colour palette by only working within one tone. So if I was working with green, I'd go from a very yellowy green to a very deep bluey green to get a nice range of colours, and then I'm only working with that. If I was only working with pink, I'd go from a very pale, very cool colour pink to a very warm colour pink and be able to vary my tones in between all of that. So say if we were to go, say if you were to try and do 3 different colours and you go, oh, I don't know how they work. These two are quite mid-tone colours, so ideally you're going to want either a darker tone or a lighter tone to tie them together. I would probably pink and green, and they're quite vibrant against each other. I'm going to want a dull tone to go in between, so I'm going to go for a dullish purple, and I'm going to go for this bluebell colour. So that's one limited palette that you could work with. And let's say split this picture into two halves. One part we're going to work with this colour palette, and the other part we're going to show just working with one limited tone. This paper is not the best, it's going to bleed like crazy. So when you're working with a limited colour palette, there's always something to remember, and that is not to be afraid of stepping outside of your boundaries and trying something that you wouldn't normally do. I have done pieces where I've only worked in one particular tone, and that's when I did my Halloween pieces, which I'll leave a link to up here, and I literally just worked in, say, an orange tone or a green tone or a purple tone and limited myself to only those colours. And I found that I really enjoyed that because it was limiting not only the colours that I was using, but I got a very effective effect from it. And you can do these challenges, you can do these palette challenges by being a digital artist, by being a traditional artist. It's just about pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone and doing something that you wouldn't normally do. It makes your life so much easier when you're trying to do stuff that you wouldn't normally do, simply because you're working to improve yourself. It's one of the reasons why I really do love doing the palette challenges, is because not only are you limiting yourself to the equipment that you are using, you are going outside of your norm to try something different that you wouldn't normally do. Now these three colours don't exactly work together, but we're going to make them work. And the reason why we're going to make them work is because sometimes you don't have a choice in what the colour palette you want is. If a client comes up to you and goes, I want these colours, and you know that those colours don't work, you're going to have to find a way to make those colours work to meet your client's needs. For example, if a client wants a bright neon orange to go with a bright neon green, and those colours can clash quite often just because they're pretty much on, well, they're not on the opposite ends of the colour wheel, but they are very, very close. Tends to be colours on the opposite of the colour wheel, you will find that those colours will clash more. But if you're going to go for a limited palette, I would suggest going from like the can you see like how you've got the red, orange and the sort of mid orange tone? They would work really well as a limited palette. This would work really well. These all would work. 3 in a row or even 4 in a row would work really nice as a limited palette. So that's something that maybe you could do. Get a colour wheel, look at how the colour wheel is, and choose 3 or 4 of those colours and only work in those tones. You'll find that not only will your skills better just because you've tried something different, you'll also find that your colouring improves as well. I'll always recommend that if you are looking at, saying, getting some markers and you're going, oh, I don't know which markers to choose or anything like that, I always say that the best set to go for is always a grey set, because you're going to learn more about colour value by working in grayscale than you are now from working in a full colour set. And after you've worked in grayscale, you can then apply those colours in the future and go, okay, so I can see that the tonal range is X, Y and Z. How can I improve that and make this tonal range better? It's very interesting when you go and try something outside of your norm. I'm always going to try and push myself with my colour palette because I don't want to get to the point where I'm always using the same colours. And at the moment I'm using a lot of earthy tones, a lot of plant tones, because I've been working on the comic. And I find that I lean to those colour palettes a lot and desaturated tones. So by going to a colour challenge which would put me outside of my norm, it will push out myself outside of my boundaries and try something that I would not normally do. I find that my go-to colours are either pink, blue and purple as a together set, or earthy tones such as brown, orange and green, or I will go, if I'm going for a cooler palette, I will go for a blue, a purple and sometimes maybe a little bit of a cold pink tone, because I find that that would really, really help push those colours together. I think if you do want to work with a limited palette, try some things different. Look at how other people have approached the same subject. I really like graphical colour palettes, so where you have like a black, white and red. I think they work really, really well. So try different colour schemes such as that. Sometimes less is more. You don't need all the colours of the rainbow to make a piece. Sometimes you'll find that hinders you. You don't need every single colour, you don't need every single pen to make the perfect piece. Just try and do something different and try and do something out of your norm. And most of all, have a little bit of fun with it. It's always good to challenge yourself, but remember, these challenges are there to help you improve. And if you don't get it straight away, don't worry. Just try and try again. And remember, like every time you draw, every time you do something outside of your norm, you are improving. And it may not seem that way at first, but you will get better and you will improve, and you are going to improve. I hope this video has been somewhat helpful in any way, shape or form, and make sure you vote for next week's topic. I really do enjoy working with limited colour palettes, and I cannot wait to do more challenge videos where I am working with a limited palette. I hope this video has been somewhat helpful. I will see you guys on Thursday for my next video, and as always, stay creative. Bye!